My meeting with the investors wrapped up just in time for lunch. I politely declined their invitation, picked up the insulated tote my assistant had prepared, and headed straight for Julian Croft's office building downtown. It was a rare day I had a free moment, and as luck would have it, I was already in his part of the city. It was the perfect opportunity to share a meal with him. We hadn't had lunch together in what felt like ages. For the past 3 weeks, I'd been working nonstop. The proposals for the Hudson Yards development project were revised again and again, and I was so buried in work I might as well have moved into my office. Squeezing out this pocket of time today felt like a miracle. I hadn't told him I was coming. First, I wasn't sure I could get away, and second, I wanted to surprise him. The mere thought of the astonished look on his face when he saw me brought an unconscious smile to my lips. His executive assistant, Grace, saw me and her professional smile faltered for half a second before snapping back into place. "Mrs. Croft, welcome." My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my expression neutral. I gave her a slight nod and pushed open the door to Julian's office. Just before it swung open, I heard the sound of a woman's laughter from inside light, cheerful and painfully intimate. The door opened. Julian looked up, the impatience etched between his brows instantly melting into surprise. Just surprise, not delight. The young woman sitting across from him froze, the smile on her face stiffening as a flash of panic crossed her eyes. The piece of braised short rib she was placing on Julian's plate hovered in midair, caught between advancing and retreating. I silently took in the scene. Julian reacted quickly. He was always quick on his feet. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" He immediately broke into a warm smile, rising to take the insulated tote from my hand and guiding me by the arm toward the sofa. The movement was so fluid, so natural, it was as if the previous scene had never happened. "This is Chloe, the one I told you about. Mr. Reed's daughter. She's interning with us for the semester." Chloe Reed looked at me tentatively, her voice saccharine sweet. "Eleanor." I gave her a cool glance. I'm used to being called Miss Vance. A senator's daughter like her had probably never been put in her place so bluntly. Her face instantly flushed, and her eyes welled up with a film of tears, making her look as if she'd suffered a great injustice. Julian shot me a look, though his tone remained gentle. "Chloe, could you give us a minute?" Chloe looked at him pitifully and slowly stood up. I tilted my head, watching her retreating back, and spoke slowly. "Pour me a coffee. Black, no sugar, no cream. Thank you." Her steps faltered. When she turned back, tears were glistening at the corners of her eyes. Julian immediately stepped in to mediate. "Who knows your taste better than I do? I'll make it." I lifted my eyes and met his gaze in silence. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. A few seconds later, he dropped his gaze and gave a slight wave of his hand. Chloe bit her lip and ran out of the room, clutching her wounded pride. As soon as the door closed, he let out a soft sigh and sat down beside me, taking my hand. "Eleanor, Chloe, is like a little sister to me. We grew up together. She just got back from studying abroad, and her father asked me to let her intern here to get some experience. I mentioned it to you. It was a request from an old family friend. It was hard to say no." I pulled my hand back, my voice flat. "How long?" After years of marriage, he knew I wasn't asking how long she'd been interning. I was asking how long they had been having lunch like this. He was silent for a few seconds before answering quietly. "Less than a month." "So, almost a month," I said, clenching my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. The pain helped clear my head. "Julian, do you remember how long it's been since we had lunch together?" During the most intense phase of the Hudson Yards project, I was a whirlwind of motion. Lunch was usually a sandwich scarfed down at my desk while reviewing blueprints. Sometimes I forgot to eat altogether until my assistant reminded me repeatedly. "Last week, your ulcer flared up. I was the one who drove you to the ER at 2 in the morning. The doctor said it was from irregular meals. I felt so guilty I couldn't sleep all night." He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, his eyes filled with a pained expression. "Eleanor, I know you've been incredibly busy. You come home exhausted every night. I didn't want to bother you." He took my hand again, his voice becoming more earnest. "Once you get through this crunch, I'll have lunch with you every single day. How does that sound?" I stared directly into his eyes. I had looked at this face for 3 years. I knew every minute expression. But right now, it suddenly felt like I was looking at a stranger. I buzzed Grace. She was a company veteran and Julian's most trusted executive assistant. "Grace, please send out a company-wide memo." I spoke clearly, enunciating every word, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Starting tomorrow, the CEO will be having lunch with one employee each day. Consider it a new company perk. The departments can rotate. Have HR draw up a schedule." Grace's eyes immediately darted to Julian. He rubbed his forehead, a clear note of helplessness in his voice. "Just send it." The moment the door closed, he sighed again. "Eleanor, there's really nothing between Chloe and me." He walked over to me, patiently explaining. "She's been spoiled her whole life. The Reeds don't trust the food from takeout places, so they have a lunch prepared and delivered for her every day. They just conveniently pack an extra portion for me. Our families have been friends for generations. It's just sharing a meal, like with a sister." I said nothing. "Besides, this is my office. If there were really something going on, do you think we'd be that careless?" He looked at me, a flicker of hurt in his eyes. "Eleanor, can't you give me even that little bit of trust? If you don't believe me, you can check the security cameras, look at my call logs, check whatever you want." My gaze finally shifted from him, past his shoulder, to the desk behind him. 2 sets of plates and silverware sat there, with leftovers scattered about, and it was just the beginning of the lunch hour. I had timed my arrival perfectly, wanting to give him a genuine surprise. During my meeting with the investors, I had pushed the pace, condensing a 2-hour meeting into 90 minutes just for this. Then I looked at the insulated tote I'd brought. Lunch from Per C. They don't deliver, so I'd had my assistant go pick it up personally. Julian's stomach was sensitive, and he was a picky eater. I had written out a full page of menu requests, all his favorite dishes, with detailed notes on preparation for each one. At this moment, that elegant, expensive tote felt like a silent slap in the face, landing squarely, again and again. I stood up, my voice startlingly calm. "I'm not a judge. I don't need evidence to convict someone. I just need a gut feeling." With that, I walked out the door without a backward glance. From that day on, I practically moved into my office. I buried myself in the Hudson Yards project, working day and night until it was successfully concluded. The moment the celebratory dinner ended, I drove straight to my parents' house. Sinking into the sofa, I updated my father on the project's progress and the company's recent performance. He nodded in satisfaction, not asking any further questions. My mother brought out a bowl of hot, fragrant pot roast and set it in front of me, her voice full of concern. "You're just like your father. The moment you get busy, you forget to take care of yourself. Look at you. You've lost so much weight." She sat beside me, gently pinching my cheek, her brow furrowed in displeasure. I immediately wrapped my arms around hers, smiling sweetly. "Then you have to fatten me up, Mom. I want your famous lasagna." This was my secret weapon with my dear mother, and it worked every time. Sure enough, she broke into a laugh, tapping my forehead affectionately before turning to head into the kitchen. My father tapped the chessboard on the coffee table and jutted his chin at me, an arrogant look on his face. "Your move." I rolled up my sleeves and sat down across from him. As the sole heir to the Vance family, I was raised to be a successor. Shortly before my college graduation, my father fell gravely ill. The doctors had given up hope 3 times. I flew back from overseas on a red-eye, dropping my luggage and immediately taking over Vance Holdings. Those first few years were a trial by fire, a constant struggle, but I made it through. My father recovered, the company stabilized, and my parents could finally enjoy a peaceful retirement. So when Julian showed up, I wasn't surprised. During the past few weeks, he had been texting me daily apologies, explanations, even sending security footage to prove his innocence. He sent me his daily schedule, accounting for every minute. I read everything but replied to nothing. I didn't answer his calls. He tried to intercept me at my office twice, but was politely stopped by security. Then he changed tactics. Flowers started arriving at my office daily, a different bouquet each time. The latest designer bags, expensive jewelry, and he even arranged for catered afternoon tea for my entire company every few days. It was such a grand spectacle that everyone in the office building knew CEO Croft had angered CEO Vance again. My assistant, Nathan, brought in a file for me to sign, grinning. "Miss Vance, Maybe you shouldn't forgive Mr. Croft just yet. Let him sweat it out for a few more days. It's great for company morale. My secretary Linda poked her head in the door to chime in. I agree. We've all been dividing up the flowers. My desk hasn't been empty for a single day. I looked up and laughed. Could you at least gossip when the person in question isn't in the room? The group erupted in laughter and quickly dispersed. They didn't understand. Anger isn't just an emotion, it's a statement. I needed Julian to understand that my boundaries were not to be tested. After 3 years of marriage, I knew exactly what kind of person he was. And I also knew exactly what was on Chloe Reed's mind. A woman's intuition doesn't need logic, but it's rarely wrong. I wouldn't even stoop to playing her petty games. The only person I needed to deal with, from start to finish, was Julian. At dinner that night, Julian was his usual charming self. He served my parents, drank with my father, and engaged my mother in conversation with perfect timing and grace. He had always excelled at this. My parents, oblivious to any trouble, showered him with praise while subtly boasting about their own daughter. After dinner, we went back to our penthouse. The moment the door closed, Julian wrapped his arms around me from behind. He rested his chin in the crook of my neck, his breath a faint, warm whisper of wine against my skin. Honey, his voice was low and a little raspy. I've missed you so much. Please don't be angry anymore, okay? I didn't move or speak. He let me go, took a step back, and pulled out his phone. He played a recording of a call. Mr. Reed, about Chloe's internship. I've arranged a position for her at the Chicago branch. She won't need to come to the headquarters anymore. The other end was silent for a few seconds. Then came Mr. Reed's hearty laugh. Excellent. When Julian handles things, I have nothing to worry about. Julian put his phone away and looked at me. Eleanor, I know what you want isn't just this. You want to see my commitment. This is my commitment. I looked at him, saying nothing. The living room was lit by a single floor lamp, casting a soft yellow glow over the quiet space. The light caught the edge of his ear, making it look slightly flushed, so red it reminded me of the day he proposed 3 years ago. He had stood before me just like this, ears flushed, but his eyes shining brightly. He spoke the old, almost comically outdated vows: fidelity, respect, tolerance, unwavering choice, facing everything together, growing old together, growing old together. That was the phrase that had moved me. It was so simple, so rustic that in our world, it sounded almost laughable. But when he said it, his eyes were full of starlight, so I believed him. In the 3 years since, he had indeed lived up to his promises. We were the model couple in everyone's eyes. Suddenly, my heart softened. Julian, I said slowly, looking at him. This is the first and the last time. He froze for a fraction of a second, then immediately pulled me into a hug, tighter than before. Thank you, honey. He buried his face in my neck, his voice laced with a smile. I love you. I didn't answer, just raised my hands to gently wrap them around his waist. All right, I'll give you one more chance. I once thought that would be the end of it. I understood Julian. Once he made a promise, he wouldn't give Chloe Reed another opportunity. At least, that's what I truly believed at the time. It wasn't until my mother-in-law's birthday gala that I discovered my marriage was far more fragile than I had imagined. The Croft and Reed families had been close for 3 generations. I knew that. I had just underestimated the weight of that 3-generation friendship in his heart. Or perhaps, I had overestimated my own place in it. That night, I wore a pale pink, strapless evening gown, accented with a sapphire necklace Julian had given me. He wore a black tuxedo with a matching sapphire blue tie. I always prepared our outfits for important occasions. I loved the subtle, complementary harmony between us. The moment we arrived, all eyes were on us. My best friend, Ava Chen, linked her arm with mine and whispered, Eleanor, I really envy you. Yours was a strategic marriage, but you two turned it into real love. I gave her a hug, my voice soft. Ava, you deserve the best in the world. She just smiled faintly. I understood that smile. Hers was the typical corporate merger marriage. They lived separate lives, got what they needed from the arrangement, and didn't interfere with each other. Who would choose a life like that unless they were forced into it? That's why I always thought I was one of the lucky ones. Julian, Eleanor, A familiar voice called from behind. I turned. Chloe Reed stood there, a smile on her face so friendly it was grating. Not Miss Vance, not sister-in-law, but Eleanor. Eleanor, about what happened last time? I've been wanting to find a chance to explain. She took 2 steps forward. She was speaking to me, but her eyes, filled with a subtle, wounded look, flickered toward Julian. Julian's lips parted as if to say something, but he remained silent. I replied coolly, "It's not too late to explain now." She choked on her words, her eyes immediately turning red as her voice dropped to a near whisper. Julian and I grew up together. We were inseparable as kids. She trailed off as if unsure how to continue. Anyway, I just hope you two don't have a falling out because of me. Finally, Julian spoke. Chloe, it's in the past. As he said it, he gently patted my back, a reflexive, soothing gesture, as if it were a habit. I nodded slightly, my tone indifferent. We won't. You're not that important after all. Chloe's tears welled up, threatening to spill over. Julian's gaze lingered on her face for a second before he quickly looked away. The air grew tense. Ava stepped forward with a smile, playing peacemaker. Chloe, the guest of honor is over there. Haven't you wished her a happy birthday yet? Only then did Chloe dab at her eyes and whisper, I'll go over now. As she turned, the hem of her dress brushed against Julian's trousers. Julian stood his ground, watching her walk away before turning back to me. Eleanor. I didn't wait for him to finish. I linked my arm with Ava's. Ava, come with me to the ladies' room. The party was in full swing. The air was thick with perfume, a kaleidoscope of glittering gowns and clinking glasses. My mother-in-law was the center of attention, her face radiant with smiles. Chloe and her mother made their way over to offer birthday wishes. From a distance, I saw that Chloe had changed her necklace. Before the party started, she was wearing a diamond pendant. Now, it was a sapphire necklace. At a glance, it looked remarkably similar to mine. Eleanor! As they approached, Chloe feigned surprise, covering her mouth with her hand. What a coincidence! Our necklaces are the same style. Mrs. Reed smiled and added, It seems you two have similar taste. Julian said nothing. He was standing beside me, but I could feel his body tense up. I curved my lips into a small smile and answered slowly. Mine is a bespoke piece, designed by Donati's head designer. It's the only one in the world. I paused, then looked directly at Chloe. Chloe, you're so naive. Some men love to use high-end counterfeits to trick young, inexperienced women. Chloe's face turned white. Mrs. Reed's smile froze on her lips, her eyes darkening. Seeing their displeasure made me happy. I raised my wine glass, swirled it elegantly, and took a small sip. Just then, my in-laws steered the conversation to another topic, and the strained atmosphere eased. It wasn't until the crowd dispersed that Julian lowered his voice, a note of helplessness in his words. Eleanor, Chloe is still young. You could be a little more generous with her. I gave a short, humorless laugh. 23 is still young? She's not like you. Of course she's not like me. I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp. At her age, I was already running Vance Holdings. He was silent for a few seconds, then his voice softened. After what happened last time, she's felt terrible. She just wanted to make peace with you. You didn't have to humiliate her in front of everyone like that. I didn't reply. I simply reached up, unclasped my necklace, and handed it to my secretary Linda, who was standing nearby. I'm not wearing this anymore. It's bad luck. Just as the words left my mouth, a choked, questioning voice came from behind me. Eleanor, what have I ever done to you that you have to target me like this? Chloe had returned at some point. She stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. The surrounding guests immediately turned their attention toward us. I maintained my smile, asking leisurely, What have I done to you? Why don't you tell me? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She just cried harder. Julian looked at her tears, his Adam's apple bobbing. The murmuring around us grew louder. Chloe, her eyes red, looked at me, then gave Julian a deep, meaningful look before suddenly turning and running toward the main entrance. Almost reflexively, Julian started to go after her. I reached out and grabbed his wrist. Julian. My voice was soft, but every syllable was sharp and clear. You'd better remember who you're married to. He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with anxiety. "Eleanor, I have to go check on her." His voice was tense, urgent. "She's not in a good state of mind. I'm afraid something might happen. I'll explain everything when I get back." With that, he shook my hand off. He strode after her without a single moment of hesitation. I stood frozen in place, watching his back disappear around the corner of the hallway. The spot on my wrist where he had flung my hand off ached with a stinging pain. I slowly retracted my hand, raised my wine glass, and offered a faint smile to the guests who were staring at me. That was the first real, no-holds-barred fight Julian and I ever had. He stood in the middle of our living room, his chest heaving, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Why won't you just leave Chloe alone? She's just a vulnerable girl. Does bullying her give you some kind of sick satisfaction?" I said nothing. She ran outside by herself and fell into the ornamental pool in the garden. His voice tightened, every word heavy. "She's been terrified of water since she was a child. Do you have any idea how scared she was, all alone in the water? When I pulled her out, she was soaked and shaking uncontrollably." At that, I finally looked up at him. "And what does that have to do with me?" My voice was still perfectly calm. "Did I push her in?" He stared at me, and then a wave of profound disappointment washed over his face. "You're both women. Don't you have even a shred of sympathy for her?" I remained as composed as ever. "Julian, don't tell me you don't know what Chloe's intentions are toward you." I looked straight at him, my voice low but forceful, leaving him no room to evade. "Now you're standing here, interrogating me. What exactly are you trying to say? Don't beat around the bush." Suddenly, he swept his arm across a shelf, sending a vase crashing to the floor. The cerulean Murano glass vase shattered into 4 or 5 pieces. A shard flew up and grazed my ankle. A thin line of blood slowly beaded up. The cut was small, but the dull, persistent ache shot straight to my heart. That vase was a one-of-a-kind piece we had found on our honeymoon. I adored it. I had accidentally chipped a corner of it once and was heartbroken for weeks. It was Julian who had scoured art restoration circles, finally finding a master craftsman, and personally took it to be repaired. When he brought it back, he had presented it to me with a triumphant, proud expression. "See? Good as new. Now, how are you going to reward me?" And now, all that was left was a chaotic mess on the floor. Julian stood amidst the shards, a look of genuine, heavy regret on his face. Chloe and I grew up together, like brother and sister. We've never crossed the line. He took a step forward, his expression suddenly turning cold. "Don't you dare look at us with your filthy mind." Each word was like a hammer blow. "And don't let me find out you've been bullying her again. If you do, I won't let it slide." With that, he turned and slammed the door behind him. I looked down at the cut on my ankle. The bleeding had stopped, leaving only a fine, red line. I suddenly felt like laughing until I couldn't tell if I was laughing at him or at myself. After that night, Julian didn't come home. He promoted Chloe Reed to be his executive assistant, directly replacing Grace. Now, they didn't just have lunch together. They had breakfast, dinner, and attended business functions together. They were almost always side by side. It was classic Julian. He knew exactly how to get under my skin. Ava called me, her voice urgent. "Eleanor, what the hell is going on with you and Julian? The whole social circle is buzzing. They're saying he and that Chloe Reed are practically joined at the hip now." She paused, then added, "And what's this I hear about you hiring a male assistant? Now everyone's speculating that you two have finally decided to play your own games." At that moment, I was reviewing the complete portfolio of our shared assets. I had hired a team of forensic accountants to handle the division, but I was accustomed to having everything under my control. No matter who I delegated to, I had to understand the foundation myself. "Ava," I said, calmly sipping my coffee, "I know you're worried, but you need to calm down first." Of course, I knew about the rumors. Chloe posted dozens of stories a day on her private social media, making sure only I could see them. A candid shot of their profiles as they sat close together, a secretly snapped photo of them sharing a pair of earbuds, a close-up of her adjusting his tie. The captions were always something like, "He'll always be the first one to protect me." Childhood friends, after all, deserve a little more understanding than others. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end, Then Ava's voice came back, cold and sharp. "Whoever you are, please get off of Eleanor Vance's body. Don't change the subject." She pressed on. "What's the deal with the male assistant? You used to keep your distance from male executives from partner companies. Your assistants and secretaries have always been women. Why the sudden change?" I answered nonchalantly. "What if I told you it was just a coincidence? Would you believe me?" "Ava, I really couldn't explain." The male assistant's name was Nathan. I had spotted his talent when he was an intern and had been grooming him for a management track. The new project required frequent travel, and in those situations, men do have a certain natural advantage. The only reason I hadn't hired a male assistant before was because Julian was prone to jealousy. Early in our marriage, he would get insecure and upset whenever another man got too close to me. Once, he held me and said in a low voice, "I know it's just work, but I still don't like it." After that, every resume that came to my desk was pre-screened for gender. But now, I no longer had to worry about that. My in-laws called me over to their house for dinner. I knew they must have heard the recent rumors. When I arrived, I walked slowly into the living room in my stiletto heels. Pushing the door open, I saw 4 people inside: my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, Julian, and Chloe Reed. The atmosphere froze the moment I appeared. Today, I had dressed in the style I preferred before I got married. A form-fitting burgundy dress, hair in loose waves, red lipstick, and needle-thin heels. The look had already caused a stir at the office earlier. Linda had exclaimed, "Miss Vance, are you trying to kill someone with that look?" The first person to look up was Julian. His gaze visibly faltered when it landed on me. It wasn't just surprise, it was more like he'd been struck in the chest, so stunned he couldn't react. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his fingers, holding a teacup, tightened unconsciously, his knuckles turning white. Chloe was the first to recover. She was dressed demurely today, sitting on a single armchair next to Julian. The moment she saw me, a flicker of smugness crossed her face before it was replaced by her usual sweet smile. "Eleanor, you look so beautiful today." Her voice was soft and gentle. "I've always admired girls who know how to do makeup. Not like me, I'm all thumbs. I can never get it right." My mother-in-law, sitting beside her, chimed in with a smile. "Chloe, you're still young. You'll learn. Eleanor has always had great style." I walked over to the sofa, gave my in-laws a slight nod, and then turned to Chloe, my smile even more genuine than hers. "Don't be so hard on yourself. Being clueless isn't your fault. When you get home, tell Mr. Reed he needs to reflect on his parenting." I paused, then added, "But don't be discouraged. No one will laugh at you for not being good at makeup. After all, what you lack in substance can only be made up for with effort. Practice a little more. You might still be salvageable." Chloe's smile froze on her face. Reflexively, she turned to look at Julian. It was a habitual plea for help, but this time, Julian seemed not to see it. His gaze was still fixed on me, traveling from my hair down to the hem of my dress, his expression unreadably complex. My father-in-law cleared his throat, trying to change the subject. "Eleanor must be very busy with work lately." "It's manageable," I replied, sitting down on the opposite sofa, my posture relaxed and natural. "The new project just launched, so it requires a bit more attention." Chloe bit her lip and said softly, "Eleanor, your style today is so different from before." She finally managed to direct the topic to Julian. Julian seemed to snap out of a trance, his gaze finally refocusing. He glanced at Chloe, then back at me, his voice a little dry. "It is a bit different. People change," I said, meeting his gaze with a faint smile. He understood my meaning. I had changed my style because of his jealousy. His lips moved, but no words came out. Just then, my mother-in-law stood up and came to sit beside me, taking my hand warmly. "Eleanor, you and Julian both work too hard. It breaks my heart to see it. Tonight, I had Mrs. Davis make all your favorites sweet and sour pork, steamed sea bass. You must eat well and regain your strength." I gently withdrew my hand, my smile still perfectly polite. "Thank you, Mother. But my parents have already prepared dinner. They said it's been too long and insisted I come home to eat." The living room fell silent again. Chloe's eyes lit up for a moment before she quickly lowered her lashes. Finally, Julian spoke, his voice low. "Eleanor, stay for dinner. I'll drive you home afterward." "No need." I stood up, the hem of my dress creating a clean, decisive arc. "My driver is waiting outside." I had originally intended to stay for dinner. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the time to come. To be fair, my in-laws had always treated me well. I had wanted to part ways amicably, to end things with dignity. But the moment I saw Chloe Reed sitting there, I knew it was no longer necessary. My mother-in-law started to say something to keep me, but I cut her off. "Since everyone is here today," I said, pulling the prepared divorce agreement from my purse. I placed it gently on the coffee table and pushed it toward my in-laws. "I have an announcement to make." Julian's face darkened almost instantly. He shot up from the sofa, his voice tight and hoarse. "What is the meaning of this?" "It means exactly what it says." My mother-in-law was flustered, quickly grabbing my hand. "Eleanor, did Julian make you angry again? You two should talk it out. If there's a misunderstanding, just clear it up." She turned and smacked Julian's arm hard. "Hurry up and explain things to Eleanor." Then she looked back at me, her voice almost pleading. "Eleanor, I've always been on your side. Don't be rash. Let me discipline him for you." Right on cue, Chloe's eyes reddened, and her voice trembled. "Eleanor, is this because of me?" "I'm sorry. Julian and I really just have a professional relationship. We're innocent. Please don't fight because of me." I couldn't help it. I let out a soft, contemptuous laugh. Truly clueless. My father-in-law, who had been silent all this time, finally looked up. His heavy gaze swept over Chloe, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had navigated the business world for decades. "Chloe, you should go home now." Chloe's face turned pale, and tears immediately started to fall, but she didn't move. She just looked at Julian with pleading eyes. Julian reached for me, but I sidestepped his hand. His hand froze in midair. He tried to keep his voice calm, but the tremor was undeniable. "Is it just because of this? You want a divorce over something so small?" I looked straight into his eyes, my words as clear and final as a verdict. "Yes, it's just because of this. Because Chloe Reed is shameless enough to pursue a married man. And because you, Julian Croft, are a faithless man who betrayed our marriage." Julian's breathing grew heavy, his chest rising and falling, his suppressed anger threatening to rip through his throat. "I didn't cheat. Chloe and I are innocent. We absolutely never crossed the line. You can check the cameras, question people, check whatever you want. I already told you," I repeated calmly. "I'm not a judge. My verdict doesn't require evidence, only a feeling." I paused, looking straight at him. "In my heart, you have already cheated." My mother-in-law tried to intervene again. "Eleanor, this is a huge matter. We should pick another time, get your parents, and all sit down to talk." I gave a faint smile. My decision is my parents' decision. I lifted my chin, my voice calm but resolute. After all, the only requirement my parents have ever had for me is that I don't commit treason. Julian took a step forward, his eyes bloodshot, his voice choked. "I don't agree." I picked up my purse and gave the divorce agreement on the table one last glance. "I've made myself clear, but perhaps you still don't understand. This isn't a negotiation. It's an announcement." My afternoon tea with Ava was scheduled for a midweek afternoon. After graduation, finding time when we were both free was a rarity. She arrived first and chose a table by the window. She waved as soon as she saw me. The moment I sat down, she fired her question. "What's the latest?" I rubbed my temples. "He hasn't signed." "He's still refusing?" "He'll sign," I said, lifting my teacup, my voice calm. "It's only a matter of time." Ava rested her chin on her hand and looked at me. "He's started sending you gifts again, hasn't he?" It was more than just gifts. Texts, calls, presents. The onslaught was more intense than when he first pursued me. Every day, Linda would report like clockwork. "Miss Vance, another bouquet arrived. Should I send it back?" "Miss Vance, Mr. Croft's messenger has been waiting in the lobby for an hour." I sent everything back. He went to my parents' house but couldn't even get past the front door. My mother called to ask if she should say a few words to ease the tension. I just told her, "Mom, don't worry about it. If he stands there long enough, he'll eventually leave." My former in-laws invited my parents out for a meal. My mother declined decisively. I'm afraid we can't make it. After hearing this, Ava sighed softly. But Julian didn't actually cheat. We all see how he usually treats you. Is it really worth ending things over one Chloe Reed? I set my cup down. Chloe Reed isn't the main reason. I looked at her, my voice coolly composed. If it weren't her, it would have been some Jessica Reed or Emily Reed. Ava watched me silently, waiting for me to continue. You know what I hate most? Complications. The Croft and Reed families have 3 generations of history, a tangled web of interests that's impossible to unravel. If I don't get a divorce, sooner or later I'll be dragged down into that mess. I took a sip of tea. When it comes to complications, I either solve the complication itself, I paused, or I solve the person who created it. Julian was the latter. Ava was quiet for a moment, then she suddenly burst out laughing. Okay, I get it. She didn't try to persuade me further. The sunlight outside the window was beautiful, casting a soft halo on the rim of my teacup. Julian was brought to the courthouse by his parents. When he stood at the entrance, he was so disheveled he was almost unrecognizable. Stubble dotted his chin, and his suit and tie were crooked. He, who had always been so meticulous about his appearance, looked like he had been dragged straight out of bed. The moment he saw me, his eyes reddened. Eleanor. He walked toward me, his voice as rough as sandpaper. I've been trying to find you. I didn't speak. I wanted to explain. His Adam's apple bobbed, his words halting. Chloe. She confessed her feelings to me once. After I rejected her, she ran off and almost got into an accident. Later, I found her in the middle of a torrential downpour. She was surrounded by a group of thugs. He stood before me like a child who knew he'd done wrong, his eyes wet and red, his distress palpable. She was so scared she was shaking all over. I know I was wrong. What you care about has never been Chloe, but my attitude. I'm sorry. I didn't handle it well. He took a deep, shaky breath. I'll change. I'll change anything. I've already deleted all contact with her, and I'll never contact her again. Can you just give me one more chance? I looked straight into his eyes and gently shook my head. I can't. He froze. Actually, I already gave you 3 chances. The first was when Chloe started her internship. You should have refused the lunches her family prepared. You should have actively kept your distance. But you didn't. The second was after I caught you, and you apologized. You should have been honest with me then about that story, about the rainstorm. You should have explained why you felt so guilty toward her, but you chose to cover it up with flowers and gifts. The third was at your mother's birthday party, when you threw my hand off in front of everyone and ran after her. 3 chances. You've used them all up. I picked up the pen, signed my name on the divorce decree, and pushed it across the table to him. Julian's hand trembled as he took the pen. A tear suddenly fell, then another, splashing onto the paper and smudging the ink. He looked up, his eyes rimmed with red. Honey, I really know I was wrong. I'm begging you, just this once. I was silent for a few seconds. Then I asked, can you really never contact her again in the future? His eyes lit up, and he nodded eagerly. Yes, I can do it. I looked at him, my voice calmly brutal. Then why couldn't you do it before? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The truth is, you understood everything perfectly. You knew Chloe's intentions. You knew my boundaries. You knew what you should and shouldn't do. You just assumed that our 3 years of marriage were enough to make me compromise. You just thought that by taking the moral high ground, you could righteously defend yourself. If I hadn't demanded a divorce, you would never have admitted you were wrong. Compared to an ignorant fool, someone who knows better and does it anyway is far more unforgivable. When we walked out of the courthouse, Julian looked like his soul had been drained from his body. I walked straight toward the car waiting by the curb. He ran after me, his voice choked. Honey? I turned and looked at him calmly. I'm used to being called Miss Vance. After the divorce, I was as busy as ever. Gifts started arriving at the office again from Julian, from others. Eventually, I couldn't even tell who was sending what. Today, it was a limited edition handbag. Tomorrow, a vintage watch. My employees were used to it, even starting a betting pool on who would finally win over Miss Vance. I just smiled and said nothing. My parents started arranging dates for me. Friends enthusiastically made introductions. If someone seemed suitable, I'd meet them. If not, I'd politely decline. I was open-minded, neither resistant nor rushed. Of course, there were rumors. Occasionally, someone would approach me, their eyes gleaming with gossip, though their words were coated with concern. "Miss Vance, why the sudden divorce?" I'd answer nonchalantly, Julian cheated. Their eyes would light up. The other woman was Chloe Reed. Oh, the sound drawn out with dawning comprehension. No wonder. Everyone in our circle knows they were childhood friends. It's the classic story. The new love never stood a chance against the childhood sweetheart. The script was all too familiar. Because I was so open about it, I unexpectedly garnered a wave of sympathy. It even reduced some of the resistance I faced on new projects. A silver lining, I supposed. When Chloe Reed came to find me, she had the same look of someone who had suffered a monumental injustice. I suspect she's had that expression permanently tattooed on. "Eleanor, how could you go around telling everyone I broke up your marriage? You're slandering me." Her eyes were red, but her tone was accusatory, as if she were the one who had been cornered. I spread my hands, asking calmly, "Isn't it the truth?" She choked, tears welling up again. You're breaking the law." "How about this?" I offered sincerely. "You should call the police." Her face flushed, and her voice rose. "You know I wouldn't do that." "Then don't say anything else." I glanced at my watch. "Is there anything else?" She suddenly lowered her head, her voice dropping. "That day, I did it on purpose. That pool was very shallow. I walked into it myself. I just wanted him to feel guilty, to feel heartbroken, to look at me one more time." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I've loved him since we were kids. I know he doesn't love me, but I just can't let go. I thought if I made him feel indebted to me, he would always remember me." She spoke in broken sentences, as if baring her soul. I sat and listened until she was finished. "Are you done?" I asked. She froze. Then her face contorted in agony. "How can you be like this? Julian is innocent. He was just tricked by me. The person he loves has always been you. He's only ever loved you." I raised my wrist and looked at my watch. "You have 5 minutes." She looked as if someone had grabbed her by the throat, instantly silenced. When the 5 minutes were up, I stood. "This coffee is on me." As I turned to leave, she was still calling after me, her voice a choked, resentful sob. She thought her actions were a grand sacrifice for love, enough to move heaven and earth. But in the end, the only person she ever managed to move was herself. Ava once asked me, "Why didn't you get revenge on Chloe Reed?" I told her, "The problem in my marriage was never about her. If Julian couldn't steadfastly choose me, then we were bound to end sooner or later." I paused, then continued, "Because in a relationship, a lack of favoritism is a form of betrayal." Julian started pursuing me again. I told him not to waste his energy. He looked at me, his voice hoarse. "Can't you just treat me like a normal suitor?" "It's not the same," I said, looking at him seriously. "The starting point is different, so the standards are different. I was initially moved by you because of your sincerity. That sincerity was your most important quality." I curved my lips into a slight smile, but my eyes grew distant. "Now, you want to enter into a strategic alliance with me? I'm sorry, but you no longer qualify. Among all my suitors, you were never the most outstanding one to begin with. The only reason we met was because a respected mentor of mine played matchmaker. But now, if we're back at the starting line of a strategic marriage, I have far better options than you." Later, Ava asked me, "What is it you really want?" I thought for a moment, remembering that afternoon I carried the insulated tote into his office, remembering him saying "grow old together," his eyes sparkling, remembering the moment he threw my hand off and chased after her. "I want someone," I said, "who doesn't need security cameras to prove his innocence, who doesn't need gifts to make up for his mistakes, and who doesn't need me to be on guard to feel secure. All he has to do is, in every moment of choice, steadfastly walk toward me." Outside the window, the sun was shining beautifully. My assistant messaged to remind me that this afternoon's meeting had been moved to 3 p.m. I replied with a simple okay, stood up, and gathered my things. "Where are you going?" Ava asked. "To a class." I picked up my bag and asked casually, "Are you free tonight? Dinner's on me." She laughed. Of course. An invitation from CEO Vance is a must accept. As I walked out of the cafe, I remembered what Julian had said that day. Can't you just treat me like a normal suitor? A normal suitor. But he didn't know that, to me, he hadn't been normal for a very long time. He was once the person I wanted to spend my entire life with, and once that position is vacant, it is never reserved for the same person a second time. The sunlight fell on my shoulders, warm and gentle. I raised my hand and looked at my watch. It was time for my meeting. Part 2. The unmasking. I went to catch my husband cheating and found him right where I expected, in my best friend's bed. The man who, for the past 3 years, had claimed to have severe erectile dysfunction was now energetically entangled with her, showing no signs of difficulty whatsoever. I raised my phone and took a full 360-degree series of photos, then packaged them up and sent them straight to my best friend's husband. I attached a message. Your wife is a miracle worker. She can cure anything, even ED. I leaned against the door frame, my voice light. Honey, you've made a swift recovery. The two on the bed froze. Ethan looked at me in utter disbelief, his mouth hanging open, speechless. Sophie, my best friend, reacted faster, grabbing a sheet to cover herself. Clara, Don't move, I interrupted, raising my phone. Let me get a few more shots. After 3 years of marriage, this was the first time I'd seen my husband so vibrant. Ethan snapped out of his daze and lunged for my phone. The sheet was yanked away, and the sight was so grotesque I had to turn away. I raised an eyebrow. Calm down. It's not like I haven't seen it before. I paused, my voice dripping with indifference. Oh, wait, I actually haven't. For 3 years, you've been saving yourself. Turns out, it was all for my best friend. Sophie's face turned crimson. Clara, listen to me. It's not what you think. I looked at her, a smirk playing on my lips. Explain what? That you sacrificed your body to cure my husband's ailment? I should be thanking you. I twirled my phone in my hand, my voice even. You two carry on. I'll just call your husband Liam to come watch. It's a shame to miss the live show. Sophie's face went pale. She was married to Ethan's older brother, making her my sister-in-law, as well as my best friend. The relationships were tangled enough to be a soap opera plot. You wouldn't dare, Ethan snarled. I looked him straight in the eye. You dared to do it. Why wouldn't I dare to show it? Just then, Sophie scrambled over and clung to my leg. Clara, I'm begging you. Don't tell him. I was wrong. I looked down and patted her shoulder gently. Get up. The floor is cold. She looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I continued, my voice just as calm. If you stay like this, my husband will see you and feel sorry for you all over again. I turned to leave, but Ethan yanked me back. What are you doing? Are you trying to tear this family apart? I laughed, my eyes crinkling. Which family? Your family or your family? I pulled my arm free, my voice casual. I'm going to the doctor to find out if the problem is with me, or if you just can't perform with me. Ethan's face flushed a deep red. Clara Morgan, don't you talk like that. Relax, I said, holding up my phone. Want to see the results of my little photo shoot? The angle is great. The lighting is perfect. It would definitely go viral. Sophie lunged at me again, but I had already stepped back. I tilted my head. Oh, should I add a caption? Sweet moments with my husband and my best friend. Has a nice ring to it. You, Sophie, was shaking with rage. Just then, my phone rang. It was Liam. I put it on speaker. Hello? Liam? Clara. I'm downstairs. Which room? His voice was deep and clipped. Sophie's pupils constricted, and her body began to tremble violently. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. I casually leaned against a chair and switched my phone to video recording mode. The door burst open. Liam Hayes strode in, his gaze sweeping the room, landing on Sophie before shifting to a flustered Ethan. Liam, Ethan stammered, his voice trembling. Liam didn't answer, just looked at me, still recording. I paused for a beat, then nodded. Yes. Sophie collapsed to the floor. Honey, it's not what you think. Quiet. A single word was enough to silence the entire room. I sat there, watching the whole scene unfold like a stage play. I was the one who was betrayed, but at this moment, I was the calmest person in the room. Get dressed, Liam said. The two of them scrambled to put their clothes on, their movements clumsy, their eyes avoiding everyone else's. Liam walked over, grabbed Ethan by the collar, and landed 2 hard punches. A follow-up knee to the gut made Ethan double over, his face pale. I watched with a slight smirk. He pretended he couldn't get it up before. Now I suspected he really wouldn't be able to for a while. Once Ethan was on the floor, Liam asked, "How long?" No one spoke. His voice grew colder. I asked, "How long?" Sophie burst into tears. 3 years. 3 years. The exact length of my marriage. I laughed, my voice laced with irony. So it was true love. Even before I entered the picture, Ethan kept his head down, not daring to look up. "Look at me," Liam commanded. Ethan slowly raised his head, his eyes filled with panic. "Brother, don't call me brother." Liam's voice was like a sledgehammer. "I don't have a brother shameless enough to sleep with his own sister-in-law." Ethan's face turned ashen. Sophie dropped to her knees, her voice trembling. "Honey, I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong." I, standing by, casually added, "Do you know you were wrong? Or are you just scared you got caught? If I hadn't caught you myself, I imagine you'd have kept making fools of us for a long time to come." I put my phone away and turned to Liam. "I have enough evidence recorded. Let's go. This room is disgusting." Liam nodded and turned to leave. "Wait, don't go!" Ethan scrambled forward and fell to his knees on the floor. I turned back, a faint smile on my face. "Why stay? To watch you and my sister-in-law put on another act?" I looked down at him, my voice cool and sharp. "Weren't you dying to be with her? We're just making your wish come true." "No, we can't get divorced," Sophie practically screamed. Liam was capable, successful, and had never denied her anything. At this point, it was clear what she was afraid of losing, and it wasn't his affection. Compared to Ethan, the money and status Liam provided were what she couldn't bear to part with. Sophie crawled forward a few steps, her voice choked. "You were always so busy with work. I was lonely. I made a mistake. Please forgive me this one time. I promise I'll cut off all contact with him, okay?" Liam didn't even look at her, replying coldly, "No." The next morning, the reception area of my company was thrown into chaos by a screaming, crying woman. I was sitting in my office sipping coffee when a colleague ran in to tell me that Sophie's mother had shown up to cause a scene. Hearing that, I nearly spit out my coffee. This plot twist was better than a soap opera. "Clara Morgan, you shameless homewrecker. You seduced my son-in-law. You destroyed my daughter's family. Do you have any conscience left?" Mrs. Collins's voice echoed from downstairs. She was already fully in character. My assistant, Kevin, rushed in. "Clara, Sophie's mom is making a scene downstairs. She's telling everyone you seduced her son-in-law." I calmly set down my coffee cup. "Is that so? Let's go have a look." As I reached the reception area, I saw Mrs. Collins, wiping away crocodile tears while telling her tale of woe to anyone who would listen. "Everyone, look at this. This woman saw my daughter married a better man than she did, so she got jealous and deliberately wrecked their family." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and watched her performance with a slight smile. The young receptionist saw me and breathed a sigh of relief as if I were her savior. "Mrs. Collins, Miss, Morgan is here." Mrs. Collins whipped around. The sight of me standing there calmly only made her angrier. "You have the nerve to show your face." "Why wouldn't I?" I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't done anything that requires me to hide in the shadows." Mrs. Collins pointed a finger at me, her voice shrill. "Stop trying to twist the truth. My daughter and her husband were perfectly happy. You're the one who destroyed everything." I laughed and asked directly, "Let me ask you a question. The son-in-law you're talking about, is it the older one or the younger one?" Mrs. Collins froze. "What older or younger son-in-law?" I nodded as if I understood. "Oh, so you don't know yet. Let me clarify for you." I looked her straight in the eye, my words slow and deliberate. "Your daughter, Sophie Collins, is married to Liam Hayes. That's your older son-in-law." I paused, then added with a smile, "But she's also been sleeping with Ethan Hayes, her husband's younger brother. That would be your younger son-in-law. So I'm just curious, which son-in-law are you defending here?" The entire reception area fell silent. My colleagues standing nearby all gasped in unison. Mrs. Collins's face shifted through shades of green and white. You're talking nonsense. I calmly pulled out my phone. Nonsense? Would you like to see the video? It's very high quality, very clear. Your daughter's performance with your younger son-in-law. I saved it all. Mrs. Collins panicked, her voice cracking. You can't do that. I looked at her, my voice composed but unyielding. If you really care about your daughter, you should go home and advise her to accept reality. The divorce papers have already been filed. Coming here to my office and causing a scene won't change anything. Mrs. Collins grew agitated. My daughter can't get a divorce. I smiled. Why not? Are you afraid of losing the older son-in-law's money, or do you just not think the younger one is good enough for you to depend on? At that, Mrs. Collins's face turned purple with rage. She stomped her foot but knew that making more of a scene would only lead to more humiliation. Finally, she left, gnashing her teeth. As soon as she was gone, my colleagues all looked at me differently. Kevin sidled up, his eyes shining. Clara, you're a legend. I just gave a small smile. That was nothing. This is just the beginning. Back in my office, I sent a quick text to Liam. Your ex-mother-in-law just paid a visit to my office. Caused quite a stir. He replied almost instantly. Do you need me to handle it? I looked at the screen and slowly typed back. No need. I already handled it. The next message came just as quickly. You've been through a lot. I stared at the screen, suddenly feeling that life really does have a way of throwing curveballs. A moment later, I looked up at Liam and said slowly, I want him to leave with nothing but the clothes on his back. Even I was surprised to hear those words come out of my mouth. Liam looked up at me, his gaze deep and searching. Are you sure? I nodded. Liam suddenly chuckled. You're taking this well. I set my coffee cup down and looked at him. It's not that I'm taking it well. It's that I'm done torturing myself. For 3 years, I protected his fragile ego. I even had to hide the vibrator I bought for myself. Looking back, it was such a waste of time. Liam's expression flickered. Vibrator? I'm a normal woman, I said matter-of-factly. What's there to be ashamed of about having a sex drive? Liam cleared his throat and quickly changed the subject. I agree. I was a little surprised. With what? Your brother was the one in the wrong, he said clearly. Letting him walk away with nothing is only fair. I looked at him for a moment. He understood. He understood the years of patience and the silent rage I had swallowed. And that person was my husband's brother. Honey, are you moving out? Ethan's voice came from behind me. I was packing my suitcase and didn't bother to look up. If I don't, should I stay here and watch you two continue your little drama? He hesitated. Maybe I can be the one to move out. I laughed. No need. This apartment, just like you, is an eyesore. He was silent for a moment, then said, I'm sorry. I glanced at him. If you're really sorry, then sign the divorce papers. Stop wasting both our time. Ethan's expression immediately changed. Don't push your luck. I raised an eyebrow. Fine. See you in court. He said nothing more, just turned and left, slamming the door. I continued packing. When I opened the bedside drawer, I found a neat stack of receipts. His meticulous habit was finally useful. I flipped through a few and froze. A Louis Vuitton bag, a Hermes scarf, a Cartier bracelet. Each item was expensive. I checked the dates all within the last 3 years, after we were married. I laughed out loud. He was so thoughtful, saving all the evidence for me. Thank you, I murmured. Your last gift to me is perfectly timed. I took photos of every receipt and sent them all to Liam. His reply was immediate. He dug his own grave. I texted back. Indeed. A very considerate husband, gathering all the evidence for me. Liam, I'm packing. Okay. Moving out. I'm downstairs. I froze. I walked to the balcony and looked down. Sure enough, his car was parked right below. When had he gotten here? After I finished packing, I dragged my suitcase downstairs. Liam was leaning against his car, smoking. What are you doing here? I asked. He stubbed out his cigarette. I was worried you couldn't manage on your own. I was silent for a beat, then changed the subject. Did you see the receipts? I did, he said, taking a box from my hands. He spent a small fortune on Sophie these past 3 years. Exactly, I said with a bitter laugh. No wonder he was always broke. He was too busy buying designer goods for someone else. I paused, my voice slow. He couldn't even buy me a new massager. Liam coughed lightly. Can we please not talk about that? Why? It's a perfectly normal thing. I tilted my head, looking at him. He didn't answer, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. I burst out laughing. Liam, are you blushing? Get in the car, he said curtly. I grinned, opened the passenger door and buckled up. Where are we going? A hotel, he said, starting the car. I've already booked you a room. Late that night, my phone buzzed incessantly. I was lying in the hotel bed, scrolling through videos, when I saw the caller ID. Sophie. I smirked. She finally cracked. Hello? I answered, my voice lazy. Clara Morgan, you are being greedy. Her voice was shrill on the other end. I yawned. You called me this late just to say that? What right do you have to demand Ethan leave with nothing? The things he bought for me these past 3 years were bought with his own money. The house, the cars, I don't care if you want those. But on what grounds are you demanding my things? I was instantly wide awake. She was hand-delivering evidence to my door. I put the call on speaker and hit record. My voice was slow and clear. So you're saying that all those things were bought for you by my husband? The other end fell silent. I fanned the flames. Sophie, thank you. Thanks to you, I now know exactly where those items came from. I paused, my voice even lighter. Oh, by the way, you just said my husband used his salary to buy them. How much was he giving you each month? Sophie froze. She had clearly realized her mistake. Don't you try to trap me? No need to, I smiled. You've already confessed everything. Do you want me to play back what you just said? You recorded me? Her voice started to tremble. Of course, I replied casually. I'm under no obligation to take someone's word for it. Sophie was frantic. You can't do that. If you don't want me to, I said politely, then have everything packed and ready. Otherwise, my only option is to release this recording publicly. Let everyone hear how a married woman accepts designer gifts from her brother-in-law. You? I cut her off. It's late. Pack up your things neatly. I'll have someone come by to pick them up tomorrow. I hung up and immediately sent the recording to Liam. His reply came in a second. Well done. I put the phone down and sank back into the bed, a smile on my face. An unexpected pleasure. I had been wondering how to prove those items were bought by Ethan, and Sophie had just handed me the proof on a silver platter. This would save a lot of time and effort in court. I closed my eyes, feeling a sense of relief. I was going to sleep well tonight. A little later, my phone lit up again. A text from Ethan. Honey, let's talk. I saw the message and laughed, still trying to play the loving husband. Fine. You pick the place. I replied decisively, then forwarded the message to Liam. Your brother wants to talk. Care to join? His reply was swift. Time and place. I forwarded the restaurant address. He replied with a single word. Okay. When I arrived, Ethan was already there. When he saw me walk in with Liam, his face changed. You two. I smiled faintly. What's wrong? Not happy to see your own brother. He tried to keep his voice steady. I asked you here to talk. So talk, I said, sitting down. Is your brother not allowed to listen? Or is it something about you and his wife that you don't want him to know? Ethan's face grew even darker. I added nonchalantly. Or are you just shy about discussing when the two of you started your affair in front of him? Clara Morgan! He slammed the table and shot to his feet. Liam glanced at him, his voice low but firm. Sit down. Just 2 words were enough to force Ethan back into his seat. I took a sip of tea. So, what did you want to talk about? Ethan took a deep breath. About the divorce. Let's be clear. I raised an eyebrow. You want to discuss you walking away with nothing? Don't be unreasonable. I scoffed. Unreasonable? When you betrayed me, you didn't use that word. When you were spending my money to buy gifts for Sophie, you didn't consider the word unreasonable. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly changed his tone. You think you're the only one with evidence? He pulled out his phone and shoved it in my face. It was a photo of me and Liam in front of the hotel. He sneered. You, staying in a hotel with my brother. How do you explain that? You say I cheated, but what about you? I looked at the photo and almost laughed. This was his trump card? I said slowly. Ethan, you've forgotten something. What? When I was at that hotel, you were still my husband. And Sophie was still Liam's wife. I smiled. You two were committing adultery during your marriages. I tilted my head. There's a clear difference. He was speechless. I continued. And even if Liam and I did have something going on, it would only be after you two betrayed us first. If this went to court, who do you think would have the upper hand? His face went pale. What good will yelling do? Liam finally spoke. You made your bed. Now lie in it. I glanced at him, silently applauding. Ethan froze. Then his voice dropped. Brother, are you really going to abandon all sense of family? Liam looked him straight in the eye. What do I owe you? Did I betray you? Did I force you to do what you did? Ethan had nothing left to say. I stood up. If there's nothing else, we're leaving. He sat there, watching us go, his eyes vacant. In the car, Liam asked. Was that satisfying? Very, I nodded. He won't give up that easily. That's fine, I said, leaning back. I'll deal with him every time he comes at me, until he understands his place. Liam glanced at me. You've got guts. I shrugged. It's not so bad. I have backup after all. He didn't say anything, but a small smile played on his lips. I relaxed into the seat, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I knew Ethan wouldn't sign easily. His pride would drag him into a long, drawn-out fight. But this time, I wasn't the one on the defensive anymore. On the day of the court hearing, I chose a sharply tailored black suit, my makeup flawless. If you're going into battle, you have to look the part. Liam drove me to the courthouse. He didn't say much on the way, but his silent presence was all the support I needed. In court, Ethan and his lawyer played their hand exactly as I expected. They claimed I was vindictive, greedy, and even hinted at an inappropriate relationship between me and Liam. I sat at the plaintiff's table, listening to their fabrications without a single flicker of emotion. In the gallery, Sophie was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, a picture of fragile victimhood that might have worked on someone who didn't know the truth. When it was my lawyer's turn, the evidence was presented, piece by piece. Shopping receipts, bank transfers, flirtatious texts, the video from the hotel, and the recording of Sophie's self-incriminating phone call. Not a single thing was missing. I watched Ethan's face darken with every new piece of evidence, and I felt a sense of release. He thought I would be the same old Clara, the one who would back down and compromise. Too bad for him that Clara was gone. Sophie, sitting in the back, was clearly losing her composure. She tried to stand up and interrupt several times, but the judge silenced her each time. I glanced at Liam. He sat perfectly straight, his expression as calm as ever. But I knew he understood what today meant. The hearing lasted all day. Finally, the judge announced a recess before the final verdict. When we walked out of the courthouse, the sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light that seemed to mirror the lightness in my heart. You okay? Liam asked. Perfectly. I nodded. He said nothing more, just silently opened the car door for me. Ethan thought I would soften. Sophie thought I would yield. But they didn't know that the old Clara Morgan had died the day she saw them in that bed. The new me had only one goal, to get justice for myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Give me another chance. Let's start over. I glanced at it and deleted it without a second thought. Some things don't get a second chance. Liam saw me delete the text. Not going to see what he said? I leaned back in the seat, my voice flat. Nothing worth reading. The script is terrible. Watching it again would just be a waste of time. A corner of Liam's mouth turned up. Back at the hotel, I replayed the day's events in my head. Ethan's desperate expression, Sophie's anxiety, every image confirmed that this fight was worth it. I had won, and I had won decisively. The day I received the final divorce decree, the weather was beautiful. Clear skies, warm sun, a gentle breeze as if the universe itself was congratulating me on escaping the mess. Liam drove me to the courthouse. He was quiet, as usual, but his silence was no longer awkward. It was comforting. We received our divorce decrees at roughly the same time. Looking at the official document in my hand, it felt a little surreal. A 3-year marriage, over just like that. Congratulations, Liam said. I held up the paper and smiled. Congratulations to us both. Walking out of the building, I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Liam, I said suddenly, we should date. He stopped walking. I looked at him, half joking, half serious. Look at us. We've been through the same ordeal. You could say it's fate. I saw the tips of his ears start to turn red and almost laughed. I'm kidding, I said, tilting my head. You didn't actually believe me, did you? Liam just glanced at me, saying nothing, but there was something different in his eyes. I wisely changed the subject. Come on, I'll buy you a meal. A celebration of our newfound freedom. Liam nodded and opened the car door for me. It was a gesture he'd done countless times, but it always felt considerate. We chose a quiet restaurant and sat across from each other. I raised my glass. Honestly, thank you so much for everything these past few months. Liam shook his head. No need to thank me. We were on the same side. I laughed. True. Both of us betrayed. Liam frowned slightly. Don't talk about yourself like that. I propped my chin on my hand and changed my tone. All right. How about two people who just escaped a dumpster fire? Sounds more optimistic, right? This time, he actually laughed. I suddenly realized how striking he was when he smiled. The sunlight streamed through the window, catching the side of his face and softening his usually sharp features. What are you looking at? He asked. I answered honestly. I was just wondering why I never noticed how handsome you are when you smile. Liam's ears turned red again. This discovery put me in an excellent mood. After dinner, he insisted on driving me back to the hotel. The car stopped at the entrance. I unbuckled my seatbelt and suddenly turned to him. Liam, what I said earlier? I was serious. He turned to look at me. I met his gaze, my voice steady. If you ever decide you want to start a new relationship, you should consider me. With that, I quickly got out of the car, leaving him sitting there in silence. Back in my room, I felt I might have been too forward. I sent him a text. Just pretend I had too much to drink and was talking nonsense. Forget about it. He never replied. After that day, Liam seemed to be avoiding me. Even when I needed to look at new apartments, he always had an excuse about being busy. I knew I'd made things awkward with my comment. Thinking back, I regretted it a little. I had just built a relationship of trust, and I'd nearly ruined it with a single, impulsive sentence. It wasn't until a month later that I ran into him by chance at a condo I was seriously considering. He was standing on the balcony, his back to me. The sun cast a long shadow, making him look tall and solid. This one's not bad, he said without turning around. He knew I was there. I walked over and stood beside him, looking out at the light-filled living room. Yeah, the light is great, and the location is perfect. Are you going to make an offer? Probably, I smiled. I can't live in a hotel forever. He turned to look at me. Want my opinion? Of course. You know more about this stuff than I do. He didn't say anything else, just led me on a tour of the place. He analyzed everything, the layout, the orientation, the ventilation, the light from every window. His tone was as calm as ever, but he was clearly taking it very seriously. Finally, he gave his conclusion. This place is better suited for a family. I paused. I could still live here alone. He shook his head. It's too big. I looked at him, half joking. So where do you think I should live? My place, he said, as naturally as if he were commenting on the weather. I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard him correctly or if he was serious. What? He was silent for a few seconds, then asked, Do you remember what you said outside the hotel that day? I froze, surprised he was bringing it up. Why are you asking? I looked straight at him. His gaze held mine, unwavering. I want to know if you were serious or if you were just teasing me. I smiled. And you? Do you want to hear my honest answer, or do you want to answer first? He looked at me for a long time. Then his voice dropped. What if I said I was serious too? My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my expression calm. Then let's give it a try. His gaze deepened. Are you sure? I raised an eyebrow, my voice light but firm. We're both single, in our right minds, and not doing anything wrong. What's there to be afraid of in trying? He took a step closer, closing the distance between us. So if I were to kiss you right now, he looked directly into my eyes, you wouldn't have a problem with it? I held my breath but tilted my chin up to meet his gaze. If you want to kiss me, then kiss me. Why are you asking so many questions? Do you need to run it by a committee first? He let out a soft chuckle. Then he leaned down and placed a very gentle kiss on my forehead. I was stunned. He stepped back half a pace, his voice still steady. Let's start with this for now. We can figure out the rest when we're both truly ready. I touched my forehead, half amused, half exasperated. You are an infuriatingly honorable man. He looked at me, a slight smile on his lips. There's no rush. We have plenty of time. That one sentence made my eyes sting. All the struggle, all the past hurt, seemed to finally find a place to rest. Seeing my eyes well up, his expression changed. What's wrong? I took a breath, trying to keep my voice normal. What do you think? I'm getting a proper proposal here, and you're acting like you're negotiating a contract. He looked blank for a moment, then broke into a genuine laugh. So what would you prefer? I gave him a look. A bouquet of flowers, at the very least. Who proposes empty-handed like this? He was silent for 2 seconds, then slowly pulled a velvet box from his jacket pocket. I stared at the box in his hand, frozen. You. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. I didn't have time to get flowers, he said, his voice calm but his eyes certain. Is this sincere enough? My eyes widened. You planned this. I did, he replied simply. Why else do you think I'm here today? It was only then that I understood. This apartment, this meeting, this seemingly random conversation, it was all part of his plan. This man of few words was a man of decisive action. He looked at me, then slowly dropped to one knee. Clara Morgan, his voice was low and steady, every word clear. Will you marry me? I looked at him, and all the noise of the past faded away. In the end, what grounded me wasn't a flowery promise, but the certainty and sincerity of the man before me. I leaned down and hugged him, smiling so wide my eyes crinkled. Yes. A month later we had our wedding. It was a small, intimate ceremony with only our closest friends and family. Ethan and Sophie were not there. I heard they had also divorced. Sophie left with nothing, and Ethan was drowning in debt. But none of that had anything to do with us anymore. We had a new life, a new future, and a happiness that was all our own. Looking back, it's almost funny. If it weren't for that betrayal, I might never have seen people for who they truly were. If it weren't for that unmasking, I might never have met the person who was truly worth my trust, my husband. He was still a man of few words, but his actions were more reliable than a million empty promises. And I, after everything, finally understood one thing. True happiness isn't about desperately holding on to a door that is already closed. It's about having the courage to walk away, to leave behind what is no longer worthy, and to step into a light that is all your own.